Hey, what's up? Thanks again for being a patron or a YouTube member. It really means a lot to show that support, and it helps me out a whole lot. So let's go ahead and get started with this cool island that I use for my cloud tutorial. And really, I'm just going to show you kind of a quick breakdown of it because it's really just kind of a couple basic parts, and then there's a couple things that I know you probably are interested in. One, how you scatter the trees and the rocks along there, the sand material, and then the water shader is probably one you're really interested in. So for lighting and stuff, we just have an HDRI that we have from the content browser and an infinite light coming in this way. So that's pretty straightforward and basic. For the island itself, it's just a landscape. That's all it is a landscape shape, and that's really it. And so there's one landscape that is for the mountain. If we turn this off, you'll see that we don't have the mountain. It's just the sand here. So rather than like selecting polygons and stuff like that, I thought it would look better, and it gives you a little cleaner transition if you actually just clip the landscape that's the mountain through the landscape that is the sand. So we have one that's sand. It's just kind of a landscape that's a little low, right? So that's kind of our nice sand. And if we take a look at that, it's just sort of a lower value settings and stuff like that. And we've pushed it underneath the water, so it's going underneath our surface, obviously. So we have that nice area where we can see that. And then what we have is our actual mountain, which is just a taller mountain that's just kind of pushing up right through the middle of our island here. And if we look close, we see all these little bumps and things in our mountain. And all that is a displacement. And so in order to create that, what we did is we used the material to create that. So this is our mountain texture. It's just a noise map that's green and brown to green and a little less green to do the color. So it's not perfectly green across the whole thing. And then we used a noise of a Luca that's a little more dramatic, and we just plugged that in to a displacement node and set the new range to -1. That way it's going to pull down in our surface and push up, and that's plugged into our displacement. And that only works when you have a displacement tag on this. So you have an RS object tag. Instead of that, we have the geometry tag. Enable that, enable the tessellation, and enable the displacement, and we just crank that up to 3. And that gives us that nice rough value there. And then for our sand material, let's take a look at that. All we did for that is we created a noise, again for the color, slight variation in the color. And then for our noise, if we take a look at what this looks like, we can isolate this view real quick. Let's select our landscape, that's our beach, and just isolate that real quick. And I think it won't matter though, because the render view is going to render everything. No, okay, so you can see our noise map on our island is just there to create this illusion of kind of sand dunes. So you can just see our settings here. It's just over noise, and it just kind of has some values here that are really like we've turned down the high clip a little bit, which just makes it all a little brighter. And we've just plugged that into a displacement rather than a bump. And again, we had that range set to -1, and that displacement value again is very low. It's set to 0.2. And that is just going to displace our surface a bit. Unsolo that. So you can see it's just going to create those nice little sand waves we see in there. It's very, very nice. Pretty cool. And obviously you can do different things or whatever. You could stretch it out, do whatever. But pretty basic on how to do both of those materials. Oh, you want to see the values here? The roughness is pretty high, 0.75, and the IOR is pretty low. But that's really it. It's mainly just that color variance and that right there. And so now let's talk about this water here. So come down here and look at this. We have this really nice water. There we are. So we kind of have this water where we can see through it here where it's hitting the edge, and then it gets darker as it gets deeper away, right? Pretty basic. So the way this works is we open up our water material here. It's a standard material, no base color, reflection all the way up, IOR 1.8, and the roughness is 0.1. So the main things we're going to do here are going to be right here in our transmission. So I'm going to mess with these just to show you exactly how these work. So change our transmission color to this blue and turn our weight up to 1, and we just get this nice blue ocean that's kind of see-through all the way. And we're going to be able to see through it the same all the way throughout it. Now, what we want to do is change our depth and our scatter color. So our scatter color, we change to this sort of dark seafoam green, because as the light gets further into our object, we want it to get sort of this darker green color, because that's kind of how the ocean is. So in order to do that, we can increase this depth value. If we turn that up to 1, we're going to see we get this really dark water that we can only see, a little bit of that blue color and see through it only here on the edges. So that means that we only have a depth of 1, so it's only allowing the light in to a value of 1. We turn that up to 5, we start getting a little further, and you can see how now we can see a little deeper into our water before we have this nice dark color. And if you wanted to go even higher, you go all the way up to 20, and now you start getting like this light water here falling back into this like very see-through water. And then eventually, as we get deeper, we'll get this nice dark water eventually. But the issue we run into is you can see the bottom of our land here, and we don't want that. So we want somewhere in between 5 and 20. So let's try 6. And that gives us this really nice light color, almost the illusion of waves breaking on the coast as well. We can maybe go a little higher even and say like 10. Take a look at that. Zoom back out. Because I like the idea that we can see further along our beach here, but I don't like the idea of seeing the edge of our island here. So it all just depends on scale and everything. So we're seeing that edge there. Let's come dial that back into like 8. Still seeing it a bit. We could darken the color, but I think 7 is going to be a good spot for us. Let's try 10, but darken our color just a bit. Yeah, it's not going to work. Back to 7. There we go. You can come in here and make this a lighter color. And you're going to see that's really going to, it's all kind of a back and forth between what the colors are and how the depth is and stuff like that. So the scatter color is really going to kind of end up being more your overall color of your water. So we can do a dark blue, but now we can lower this depth down to 2. So it's kind of a balancing act between those two values. So let's go ahead and go with a seafoamy blue green here, and then we'll go with a lighter seafoamy green kind of water here. And we should be able to turn this back up. Like a 20. Maybe just a 10. And you can see how that's working. But let's go ahead and just go back to our light color here and our darker color. Actually, that's pretty good. Don't mind that. So now we have this nice fall off. But that's it. It's just a balancing act. There's no SSS or anything like that. It's just transmission. And it's just messing with the depth and your color values. If you want this to be a little more blue, you would come in here to your scatter color and make that a little more blue. And now we have sort of this more blue, and then we have this, and then we can see we're sealing our island there. Take this depth back down to 7, even 5. Change our scatter color, darker color. And it's going to multiply against that as well. We'll do a nice light white color, because this is what's going to be basically around the very edge of our island. I'm going to come down here to the depth. I'm going to do like a dark blue. I'm going to lower that depth value down. 0.25. It's a bit of a balancing act. Of color for the top, color for the bottom, and the depth. But I'm pretty happy with that result. I can make this a little brighter. A little more blue. Here we go. I would take this and make it a little more green. Yeah. That looks nice. All right, and then the boats and stuff are just Sketchfab models that I brought in. But for the rocks and the tree, all I did was I isolated this island here. This is the mountains. I went to the content browser, typed in palm, grabbed a palm tree, brought it in, scaled it way down, right-clicked and said connect objects and delete. That way it's just one object. And then what I did is I used the scatter pin tool here, and make sure you have set your selection aligned to objects here, and that way it will align to your mountains here. I probably should scale this down even more. And I just, you have your scatter pin tool selected. You can just draw on here, and what you'll notice is we have kind of this spacing here. And our trees are all kind of the same. So what we want to do is we want to come in here and adjust the randomness here. And definitely want to increase the rotation. And we can adjust our scale. And so you can have all of these things be totally randomized. We can change it from splat placing to scattering. Lower our density down to like 1. And we can have a lot of trees here. So what we want to do is have our selection tool selected, have our palm tree selected, have our density at like 800, and middle mouse click to scroll in our radius. And we just want to draw in on our mountain here, and we'll rotate around and draw in on the sides, and we'll draw back in over top. Change the seed. Draw back in, kind of fill that in a little bit. And we can increase the density again, change the seed again, and again, just fill that back in. I could change it back to splats. But yeah. Now, we can look at this. And we have a whole bunch of really nice palm trees. Very cool, huh? And you could come in and you could use multiple palm trees and have them also all selected and bring them in just to add some variety. And the reason we did that versus like a cloner on a surface and stuff is it just gives you more control. So you can have areas like if you wanted to build a river, you could come in here, go to remove, use your selection tool, and you could, draw a path where you're going to have a river come through there if you wanted to. So really, really cool. And then I did the same thing for the stone. Came in here and said stone. There's some redshift stones here. Just grabbed that, pulled that in, and did the same thing where in this case, what I did was I drew it around the mountain and around the island sparsely, but I had a little area here where I clustered a few more and went some into the ocean, and that just kind of helped. And the main thing is when you're doing your scatter pin tool to, make sure you have some variance built in there in the settings as far as the rotation, the scale, all that stuff. So really neat that you can come in and do that. And so now when all is said and done, we have all these materials here that weren't Redshift materials when we brought in our tree, the presenter materials. So we need to select and shift click all of those. And with those selected, we go to Material, Tools, Convert, and Replace All Materials. Now this actually does a pretty good job because they're using texture maps. So now when we come in here, you'll see it brings up the old shader graph, but we have a diffuse texture and a reflection texture plugged into an RS material node, which is exactly what we want. We have the weight set. It does a pretty good job of converting that for us. So one thing I want to do is I'm going to come down here and I want to look at our trees that we have on our island here as the light is coming through them. And we're just going to hit render on this. We don't have any light coming through our leaves at all. And so what we want to do is we want to go in here to our palm leaf. And we just want to go in here and we want to take this diffuse color and we want to plug that into our base properties, backlight, translucency, color. Then we go in here to the weight of that, twirl that down, and add like a 0.6. And that's a little intense. We're going to say like 0.3. There we go. And so now we're going to have just that light is going to let that color through. And we're going to do the same thing for all of these. Backlight color, backlight weight 0.2. And again, backlight color, and again 0.2. Those are all the wrong textures. Backlight color, and then 0.2. Backlight, color, weight 0.2. And there we go. So now we actually have that light coming through our leaves here. So if we came in here and we took our light and we cranked it up to like 10, it's really going to shine through those leaves. And we could adjust that backlight to get even more, but you can see how adjusting that light actually makes our leaves a little more see-through. So if we bring that back down to like 2 and we go back to our up-high camera angle, it's just going to give a little more realism to our leaves and our trees. And so this way we kind of have that nice variance color look. So our trees that are in the sun are a little brighter because they're getting a little more light coming through the leaves. Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, there you go. That's how you create the island. And then we can bring in those VDBs from my renders here. The project, be sure to check those out. And we'll have some nice clouds over top of our island. Very cool. Yeah, that's how you create the water, the shader, the trees, the clouds. Everything comes together nicely. Very pretty. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks again for being a member. It really means a lot, and I appreciate your continued support. This is the first of many members exclusive videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you next time.